Welcome back to the Dr. Mary Travel Best Guide podcast. I help women like you to make travel memories around the world, and I'm excited to connect with fellow travelers and share experiences. I've been writing travel guides since 1993. Let's get going and adventure alone. This episode has an FAQ about how you can get started with travel. Step 1. And it's mostly about my travels in Stockholm and Gothenburg, which is Sweden, and that would be step 5. I'll also talk about my misstep. I missed the museums in Stockholm. And today's tip was early to bed and early to rise and rest often. So let's go through the FAQ. I'm going to just ask a bunch of questions. This is step 1 questions where you are going to be asking a lot. What's your primary travel style? And are they structured? Are they tours? Is it relaxing resorts? Or is it independent urban exploration? Everybody's different, and you have different types of questions to ask. So also, what's your biggest safety or logistical concern? So if you're asking these questions, you should know the answers before you leave home. Your travel style may change depending on the circumstances, but thinking about it in advance is going to help you to stay focused rather than being swayed by the next ad you see for a package deal. What are your safety issues? If you deal with that, so you'll have some mental preparation, you're going to be much happier. Let's talk about building that confidence. And I have a confidence challenge. In Sweden, I wanted to know, what was the currency exchange rate? Or maybe it's a country you're going to be visiting. Do you know the exchange rate? For Sweden, it's about 7 KR per 1 USD. And if you like this confidence challenge, my book series is going to go deeper into using AI, apps, and currency conversion. And it also will move you through the 5 steps to solo travel from easy to more challenging with collaboration and prompting tips to fill the communication gap when you solo travel. You can find the series at the link in the description in the notes. So Book C, which helps you to adventure alone, addresses these concerns, and it shares stories of how I survived 2 90-day solo trips around the globe. Now, all of these books are on the website, 5stepstosolotravel.com, or at Amazon. It's a 3-part series available in audio, paperback, and ebook. So let's talk about Sweden. Okay, it's a country I wanted to visit for a long time, with about 9.7 million people, and it's close to the size of the state of California. So it feels spacious, it feels clean, and it's easy to breathe. When many people think of Sweden, they think of IKEA, they think of Volvo, they think of ABBA, maybe even they think of WikiLeaks. But for me, Sweden became much more personal than that. It became a place of water, of kindness, of public transportation, of summer light, and quiet moments with strangers who became part of my journey. I arrived in Stockholm with a short window of time. I had booked an overnight cruise and arrived about 10 in the morning. And then I needed to leave the next morning around 8 a.m. It means I had to make choices. Should I do the hop-on, hop-off bus? Should I focus on the museums? Should I take a boat? Stockholm has so much to offer that one day is not enough. But sometimes one day is what you have. So Stockholm is built across islands, and water is everywhere. That's the first thing I noticed. You can see the city from the sidewalks, from the bridges, from the boats. I thought about visiting places like the Vasa Museum, the Nordic Museum, Skansen, the Royal Palace and Nobel Museum, and the Armory. I had also notes about seeing the changing of the guard, Gamla stan, all the things that are going to be like taking a cruise in Drottningholm. And there's also day trips from Stockholm, like places like Uppsala, and even rock carvings in Tanum if you wanted to plan a longer trip. So always plan a return trip if you like the city. I will be back. But travel is not only about the places on your list. Sometimes it's about the person you meet in a hostel hallway. So one morning, I met a woman named Elizabeth, and she was from Holland. She was dressed all in pink, and she looked beautiful. Her hair was carefully braided. She had the biggest smile. We had actually met the day before when she was entering the hostel. I had the security code, and I let her in behind me because she looked trustworthy. It was a simple moment, but the next morning we had a conversation that stayed with me. She had recently been in Chicago, so we talked about the city and some of the places that made it special. She told me she had wanted to go to Texas, but the flight was too expensive. She also showed me videos of her son competing in a sport I had never heard of before. It involved pulling, pushing, and lifting. She was so proud of him, and I loved seeing that. These are the kinds of moments in travel that matter. You may not plan them, you may not write them down in your itinerary, but they bring joy, laughter, kindness, and connection. And I hope I gave Elizabeth a little goodness that morning because she certainly gave some to me. She seemed like someone who may have been lonely and looking for friendship. Sometimes, as solo travelers, we're not just receiving kindness, we're offering it too. The day before, I had spent time with a woman named Beta. Now, that's not her real name. And I met her through Servas. It's a Servas host network is what it is. And she lived near my hostel, and so it was convenient for us to meet. She was a teacher currently on leave after an injury. She had blacked out while riding a horse at full gallop. And that story alone made me pause and think about how quickly life can change. So she was easy to spot. She was walking 3 small dogs when we met. So we walked around Kungsholmen, which means King's Island. It's a small island and it felt very residential. One side had canals and the other side had swimming, boating, restaurants, and a larger waterway. In the distance, I could see Vasterbrand Bridge. I had my bathing suit with me, so I went swimming in the canal. It was delightful and refreshing, and that swim became one of my favorite memories from Sweden. Not fancy, not expensive, just a local place, clean water, a kind host, and a moment of freedom. The following day, I went to Gothenburg, Sweden's second largest city. Gothenburg is known for Volvo, shipping, design, and a strong connection to the harbor. I had a list of possibilities there, too. The Museum of Art, the fish market, the botanical gardens, the university, the science center, and maybe the library. I stayed at the STF hostel with a check-in at 3 p.m., and I needed to return to the station the next morning for my train to Oslo. I had notes on tram numbers 3, 9, and 11, but when I arrived, construction was underway. My tram was not running from the central station, or at least I couldn't find it. So I did what solo travelers sometimes do. I jumped on a bus. I picked number 5 and decided to ride. That was one of my favorite low-cost travel tips. When you're in a safe city and you have a transit pass or a ticket, ride public transportation and look out the window. You can learn a lot about the place that way. I passed the university. I saw design schools. I saw an amusement park with a Ferris wheel and lots of kids. It reminded me of a smaller Disneyland in the middle of the city. I saw shops, neighborhoods, bridges, and people going about their regular lives. Now, at Brunsparken Station, I noticed trains and buses going in different directions, including bus 5, bus 10, and bus 18. I first went north, then I went south, and then toward the end of the line toward Langsman Garden. So I kind of took a lot of different routes. There was still a lot of construction going on, but I reminded myself that the summer is probably the season for building and repairing, and in a northern climate like Sweden, you do what you can while the weather allows. So here I am on the bus. We crossed a bridge, and I could feel Gothenburg is a working city. It is a shipping capital, and you sense the movement of goods, produce, and people in and out of the harbor. It doesn't feel like a museum city, it feels alive. Then, the next morning, I left my hostel and took tram number 3. But instead of getting off at the main station, I decided to ride farther, almost to the end. I ended up looking at a beautiful blue sky with no clouds. There were trees in different shapes and shades of green, but in the distance, I could see a cemetery. There were a few cars, not much traffic. For a weekday morning, it was surprisingly quiet. That's what I remember most about Gothenburg. It felt calm, relaxed, almost chill. The people at the hostel were kind to me. I made sandwiches for lunch and prepared to continue to Oslo. So, Sweden, in retrospect, gave me museums, but I didn't have enough time to visit fully. Boats I wanted to take, trams that didn't always run as planned, and conversations I will remember longer than any checklist. It reminded me that solo travel is not about being alone, it's about being open. My travel tip for Sweden is this: permit yourself to explore slowly. Ride a tram, take a boat, walk by the water, talk to someone at your hostel, pack a bathing suit, even if your swimming isn't even on your schedule, and leave room in your plans for kindness because that may become the best part of your trip. I'm also going to mention my misstep. That is, I actually didn't see any what are called cultural sites in Stockholm, but I did a lot of walking and spent time in nature. And today's tip is early to bed and early to rise and rest often. Start early, finish early, rest in the midday if you're overheating in summer or frigid cold in winter. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next journey.